Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is me flying with Just Flight Hawk T1. We're in the vicinity of RAF Valley in Anglesey, Wales, United Kingdom. ICAO Echo Golf Oscar Victor, and the scenery is from flightsim.to. Everything I do, anything I reference in the video, I'll put in a link in the description below. I'm going to set up here for just some basic aerobatics, and the purpose of this video is to demonstrate the considerations for a forced landing in a fast jet. Now, I was going to set up the emergency via the failure system on Microsoft Flight Sim, but I couldn't get the engine fire to work, so I will suffice to just switch the throttle off myself. So here we go, upside down, and I select the throttle to HP off to simulate that we've got a failed engine. So the first order of play is maintain aircraft control. So we've rolled out, we'll cancel the attention getters. As I pitch nose up, I'm just diagnosing the issue, so analyze the situation. And if this was just a flame out, I might go for a relight, but we're going to pretend it's an engine seizure, so throttle HP off, fuel pump off, LP cock off. Best glide, get below 300 knots for the rat on the spine of the aircraft. And then best glide is 180 knots, which is what I'm now finessing to. So the 180 knot glide attitude is actually the same as the 300 knot straight and level attitude. Here, just having a look at the hide pressure, so hide 1 is 0, and hide 2 is being supplied by the rat, which you can see on the spine of the aircraft here. Very quiet, peaceful gliding on a Saturday afternoon. So at this stage we could run through premeditated ejection drills, but here's the forced landing, so we're gliding, yes. We're squawking emergency, running through the other things, air brake in, external loads we don't have, hide 1 and 2 pressures already checked. UHF power and instrument standby instrument switch can go to BAT, which I do now, and the electrics, well, we're going to be on the ground in about 5 minutes, so I don't bother with the load shedding. At this stage I'm having a look for an aim point on the runway, and you pick an aim point about a third into the runway to aim for no flap, and then when you've committed to that and you can make it, you'll then put the flap down. The final part of the forced landing is this, just to confirm: throttle, fuel pump, LP cock off, engine start switched off. So if you've been trying to relight the engine up until this point, you'll probably stop and commit to the landing. Of course, the landing is secondary to actually saving yourself, and with an ejection seat you're always mindful of whether you just have to pull the handle. So with 7,000 feet, 270 degree left turn to get us down to our high key altitude of 4,500 feet above ground level. So about 3,000 feet of height is lost in a 360 degree turn, is what I noticed from my testing here. So 270 degrees should be slightly less than that. Noting the speed, keeping that as best I can to 180 knots. Checking the fuel, so a fairly heavy weight, so you can have a look in the forced landing checks that with gear down and flap up, you don't want to be below 175 knots. So again, 180 knots is sensible. Pausing it here, we're approaching a high key position, so the in-use runway 31, we're doing a left-hand pattern, so slightly on the right-hand side looking to turn left to a low key. Low key is 2,500 feet to 3,000 feet above ground level in a downwind no flap position. The other reason why I'll turn left here is if I do eject, at least the aircraft goes into the sea. Again, focus here about 30 to 40 degrees angular bank, checking my aim point, and keeping my speed at 180 knots. Now ideally I'd be slightly further upwind than I am, but instead as I keep the turn coming, I'll lower the gear on the standby system, and once you commit to doing that you can't bring the gear up again. And just keeping that speed under control, so I go about 5 knots slow, so I'll lower the nose correct for that, and I keep the turn coming to approach short final. So looking at the runway aim point about a third of the way up, if I see that aim point going up as I look at it, so the sight line, then I know I'm going low and I need to increase my bank to shorten my turn or tighten my turn. If I see the sight line going down, then I know I'm going high and I need to increase my ground track or anticipate taking flaps slightly earlier. You can cross-control this down to normally about 500 feet for practice, and that's another way of scrubbing off altitude if you need to. So the speed is better, The bank is nice and stable. I'm still considering that ejection by 300 feet. That's the latest you really want to commit to eject. We're in a good position here, and I can see that I'll definitely make my aim point without selecting flap. So once I've committed to that, I'll then lower the flap on the standby system. And once you do that, it goes straight to down, so I'll lower the nose. But then I want to do a two-stage flare. So around about here is my first stage flare. And as the runway comes up, I do a second stage flare. You don't want to touch down above 130 knots, and then you just flare the aircraft as required to land it. I did that from outside just to make it a little bit more interesting. And there we go, we're on the ground. Depending on the reason of the engine failure, if it was a fire, you'd be doing an emergency ground egress, but this was just a flame out or an engine seizure. So here I'm just exercising the controls. You can see the rat is still out. And as soon as the rat stops producing hide pressure, then the controls stop moving because it's all linked into the same hide 2 system. So very nicely simulated by Just Flight. So I would have put the pins back in if I could do. I've opened the cockpit up, switching everything off and jumping out of the aircraft in whatever fashion I deem necessary based on the situation. So we're going to end with the caveats. Of course, that was a quick and dirty look at how to force land a Hawk T1. It wasn't perfect. It had most of the considerations. There's a lot of other teaching that goes into it, more than I can squeeze into a 7 or 8 minute video. If you've got any questions though, throw that in the comment below and I'll be happy to try and answer that. Likewise, if you see anything that I've done particularly wrong, I also welcome feedback and we can all learn from it at the same time. But with that in mind, and from a sunny RAF Valley, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.